The city's homeless problem, however, is worse now than ever, according to a new report which says that nearly 115,000 people went homeless last year, including nearly 40,000 children. Coalition for the Homeless Workers lay the blame squarely at the feet of Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
He replaced the federal programs with a series of time-limited subsidies that give you only 1 or 2 years of housing assistance and then cut you off, even if the family is too poor to afford the apartment rent. And so as a result of that, lots of families are ending up making a return trip through the city shelter system. It's indisputable that we've got more homeless people now.
That the shelters are overpacked because people are losing their jobs. They're going from their apartments to homes to the city shelters. People that don't take the services, they don't know about them.
Among the many predictions about this recession, one has consistently proven to be true. Forecasters have said unemployment will continue to rise, and it has. Today, the government reported another 467,000 jobs lost in June, taking unemployment to 9.5%, and that's the highest level in more than a quarter century. The rising unemployment raises questions about the economic stimulus, which was supposed to create jobs.
Since the recession began, 6.5 million Americans have lost their jobs, and the unemployment rate
Columbia,
has
South Carolina,
doubled.
voted unanimously to ban all homeless people from its downtown business area. Violators will be jailed, but those who wish to comply can stay at a shelter just outside the city limits. The catch is that they have to be among the first 240 to get there and are not permitted to leave the grounds by any means other than the official shuttle booked by appointment. It's estimated that Columbia has over 1,500 homeless citizens. Police have been assigned to patrol both the restricted city region and the road near the shelter to make sure no homeless people are meandering around either. Should the officers not catch all of the individuals violating the new plan, business owners and residents are encouraged to call the new hotline set up by the city. According to the councilman who proposed the plan, the removal of several benches throughout the city is another measure being taken to ensure the homeless don't make themselves comfortable. South Carolina's ACLU legal director is looking into the situation and said that giving the limited options of being jailed or shuttled out of town is an abuse of power.
For the past 8 years, Dan Duvall has run a sober living center for about 30 homeless people on his 72-acre ranch. In California, a 66-year-old man was jailed Monday after being accused of illegally housing homeless people on his ranch in San Luis Obispo.
After police received reports of strange activity in the area. Whilst police have found no evidence to support such claims, they have suggested that there is a strong possibility they are linked to the disappearances.
We're talking about a different kind of mystery, though. Disappearances that are not caused by predator attacks or criminals hiding out there in the woods or just bad luck.
I've instructed the Commissioner of Parks and Recreation to issue regulations that would ban outdoor feeding in all city parks.
He was charged with violating Orlando's new city ordinance that bans feeding homeless people gathered in large groups.
Like sleeping on a park bench, eating on sidewalks, or congregating in public spaces, all crimes. This would, in effect, criminalize homelessness.
The regulations are so out of control that in cities all across the U.S., you now have to think twice before giving a hungry person anything to eat.
Out there that has passed legislation that is criminalizing homelessness. City council members in Columbia, South Carolina recently voted unanimously to give people on the streets the option to relocate or to get arrested. Now, this stems from concerns that Columbia has become a, quote, magnet for homeless people, according to the city's emergency homeless response report. And council members are urging people that this is just a temporary stopgap measure. That's something that Councilman Cameron Runyon told local station WIS-TV about. Take a listen.
This is stopgap. This is going to open up a window of opportunity for us to come together as a community to develop the long-term response to this problem. This problem has plagued us for a generation and a half at least.
So you can't come up with the long-term response yet. You just start arresting people. I'd say that it's pretty troubling, John. And as I mentioned, it's not the first city in the United States that we've seen resort to similar measures.
No, there's a few cities that have done this. And, I know they talk about the fact that there's a off-site homeless shelter that they can ship the homeless they arrest to, but one, they have nowhere near the number of beds that equal the Columbia's homeless population. And 2, it's police guarded. They can't leave without permission. They have to be shuttled to and from on a special shuttle bus. So I'm not sure, is this a shelter or prison for the homeless? But at the same time, a lot of cities, we've talked about several cities that have been doing this, cited in the article. Cities obviously are looking at their downtown business districts, want to bring in people, but at the same time, let's look at addressing the root cause of homelessness, not criminalizing, the fact that someone, just doesn't have a home because they may not have the job, they may not have the money. A lot of other cities are looking at other ways to address homelessness, not, arresting them, shipping them out to someplace in the middle of no place and putting them in a shelter that may or may not be homeless jail. So
yeah,
very interesting.
It's not addressing the problem. It's just that mentality of locking people up and throwing away the key and trying to just forget about it and not even have to acknowledge or visually see that this problem exists anymore.
Volusia County 10-year-old will stay locked up for beating a homeless man. Hello, I'm Barbara West.
I'm Vanessa Eccles. One of the 10-year-old boys who beat a Daytona Beach homeless man is going to stay locked up for a long time. In just the last hour, a judge sentenced the boy to time in a secure treatment facility. Channel 9's Jason Allen was in the courtroom and has details on why the judge decided the boy needs help.
For the first time in this case today, we saw real emotion out of this boy. We heard a real apology. He even told the court he wanted to go home from the courthouse here today with his mom, but he is not going to go home, potentially not for a long, long time. The boy has been in juvenile detention since late March. That is when he and 2 other boys severely injured John D'Amico, a local homeless man. They threw rocks and a brick at D'Amico that's left him blind in one eye. The 10-year-old Daytona Beach boy even buried his head in his mother's arms at one point today as the judge and attorneys discussed doctors' reports about his health. They said he shows a lot of aggressive tendencies and threatens to hurt not just others, but even hurt himself. Now, the judge said he believes the boy does have a bright future, but he also said he needs serious treatment. The victim, however, did not believe the boy's apology for what he did.
I'm hearing the words, but I don't really hear sincerity. The kid's a little good actor. You know, all the tissues and stuff like that. He's a pretty good little actor.
There is no time limit on how long the boy can stay locked up in that treatment facility. He's going to stay in there until they decide he's ready to come out. The other 10-year-old boy in this case, he still has to be sentenced for his part. That's going to happen here next month. Reporting live in Daytona Beach, Jason Allen, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Florida. It is unconstitutional for a juvenile offender to get mandatory life sentence without parole. In his defense, they're saying that he should be rehabilitated and have a second chance at life. This kid's 13 years old. Made a mistake, is it worth paying the rest of his life for? Are we going to turn a blind eye and rehabilitate this kid? Or are we going to enforce the consequences of his actions? If you guys were to ask me, this story just pisses me off so much because this kid, I feel so bad for him, such a rough upbringing, and look what is ahead of him now. This kid's 13 years old and he might go to prison for life. He's being tried as an adult right now. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But that's pretty much all I have to say in this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. What's up, you guys? Assalamu alaikum. I'm Layden Productions, and I love to talk about the news, so let's get started. Let's talk about this Catholic school who just turned their second floor office into a Muslim prayer room. This is the first high school in the city, private or public, to do so. In this room, instead of tile floors, they're going to cover it up with carpet. Speakers will be installed and prayer mats purchased to provide Muslim students a chance to go pray. At this school, there's estimated about 24 Muslim students. So finally, they have a quiet and safe place that they can go and pray. The idea has been in the works.
And my little boy was 6 years old when he first started kindergarten. On his very first day of school, the school kept calling me up at work 10, 20 times saying, Vincent won't sit still, or we have a problem with your son. And they called me in for a meeting with the principal, a social worker, psychologist, and the teacher, and they said, you're either going to have to put your son on Ritalin or we're going to put him in a school for special needs children. I took him out of that school and I put him in another school. Everything was fine for a while until they got the records from the other school. Then the same thing happened. They started calling me at work saying, Vincent won't sit still, you need to come in and have a meeting. And again, I went to the meeting and they said, you have to put your son on Ritalin or we'll put him in a special school. I took him out of that school and put him in another school, Sunnyvale. And that is where they called CPS, Child Protective Services, and when I was at work, they took my son out of daycare and they put him in an institution. When I got home from work, there was a card on my door from a police officer, and it said, please call me regarding your son. I called the Sunnyvale Police Department, and then immediately I picked up the phone to call my mother. And the next thing I know, the police officer just came right through my door without even knocking or anything. He grabbed the phone away from me. He says, you're not calling anyone. And he slammed me down. I thought, this guy's crazy. And so I started crawling away from him, and he grabbed my ankles so hard and pulled me back that I still have his fingerprints in my ankles to this day. They took my son and they put him in the children's shelter on Union Avenue in San Jose. And this is a locked children's facility. It's like a little child's prison. This facility has been audited by the state several times for code violations. The woman who owns this shelter used to be the mayor of Sunnyvale, where I was arrested. It is a for-profit organization. So they actually make money off of the number of children that they apprehend from parents. They put my son on Ritalin against my will, and I was just horrified. Every week when I went in to visit him, he would have bruises all over him. I could tell he was on drugs because one time his demeanor would be like all lethargic, and the next time he would be bouncing off the walls, or sometimes he'd be talking to me and he'd just make little movements like that, and I go, what are you doing that for? But anyway, I noticed, his mental and physical health was deteriorating. The final straw was one time I came in to visit him, and the whole side of his face was bruised and swollen, and so I said, that's it. I filed for an emergency protective order in federal court, and I took a picture of it as an exhibit, but the judge denied it without even a hearing. So I thought at that point, that's it, I'm getting my son out of there. My son kept begging me, Mommy, please, get me out of here. Why do I have to stay here? He did not understand why he had to be there. So one day I went to visit him, and he was eating breakfast. I just picked him up, and I held him, and I said to the counselor, I just want to show him something outside, and I'll be right back. And I just took him outside. I ran down the stairs, put him in the car, and we just drove off, and I drove to Canada. We were happy in Canada. We were there for about 2 months. Vincent started coming back to normal. You know, my son was so happy. He kept turning the radio up in the car and he's going, "We're out of there, we're out of there." He was so happy. We were both so happy. We were ecstatic. I had no idea that they would pursue me in Canada. We were pulled over by the RCMP. They checked my license and he said, "Are you aware that the FBI has 2 warrants out for your arrest?" I said, "No, I didn't." But they actually had a $500,000 bounty out for me and my son. The U.S. authorities took my son back to California and they were going to try to charge me with 2 felonies, 10 years each. I spoke with a Canadian immigration officer who offered me political asylum. I stayed in Canada for 3 years. But I thought, no, I'm going to go right back down there where my son is, back in the belly of the beast and fight it. That was my only way I was going to get my son returned. So I came back to Santa Clara County and I spent 4 months in jail. Many people all over the world wrote to the DA and the judge saying, "Why are you doing this to this woman and her child?" And that support helped me to be released from jail. So now I'm free, I'm out of jail, but the problem remains. I still have no idea where my son is.
I'm from Gary Null & Associates in New York City, and we're doing a story on Vincent Booth. And we wanted to see if we could interview someone. No.
So I don't know what condition he's in. I'm worried about it. And I hope that the next hearing I have with Judge Leonard Edwards will result in a visitation with my son and eventual reunification. Most Americans will ask, how can this happen in America? I don't believe that this could happen in America. Well, it is happening. If there's one thing I've learned about this whole nightmare, it's that I never imagined how powerful the government can be. I had a perfectly normal life. I was a notary public. I had a perfect driver's license record for 35 years. Never got in trouble, never been in jail. And now I had everything taken from me, including my son. I have nothing.
You need to get off our property. I just want to speak to someone about Vincent Booth. You need to get off our property right now.
I'm like a pariah, according to the government.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. It's about 20 years ago now that I began to understand not just the scale of pedophilia and child abuse and child abduction and all the rest of it, but the people and the level, cesspit level, known as the elite level of our society, which is driving it. It was in the 90s that I started uncovering Father George Bush as a monumental pedophile and child killer, serial child killer. I've gone on American radio and said it many times. I've said it in my books, and I'm still waiting for a reply. Then in this country, I realized through talking to his victims, those that survived, that people like Ted Heath, the British Prime Minister between 1970 and 74, was a child-killing paedophile. When I said that in a book in 1998, a journalist rang him, read the passage, and I never heard another word. Why? Because it's true. And we need to understand that this child abuse, this paedophilia, this systematic stealing of children from loving parents by state social services networks is not happening in isolation from the network and structure that holds billions of people in servitude to the few. It is fundamentally connected for this reason. This world is not controlled directly by prime ministers and presidents and heads of the World Bank and secretary generals of NATO. These are pawns, these are frontmen. Not very nice, but still pawns and frontmen, gophers. This world is controlled by a network of families, very few, under different names, that sit in the center of a structure of secret societies that operate like a transnational corporation. If you look at the structure of a transnational corporation, you have a headquarters somewhere in the world. And then in each country, you have the subsidiaries of that headquarters. Each subsidiary has the same shop front, the same corporate logo, the same way of doing things. And they run their operations in the different countries in line with the diktats from the center, the headquarters. This world is controlled by a network of secret societies that operate in exactly the same way, controlled by this network of interbreeding families. And Minty was absolutely right. At the heart of it, at the center of it, at least in the human realm, shall we say, is the House of Rothschild in America and wider across the world, Rockefeller, and so many of these other major corporate banking names, including the shower down here in Buckingham Palace, by the way. And so we have this network of secret societies whereby the center, and it's in Europe, dictates to the networks in each country, and they run their country and change their country in line with the diktat from the center, the spider. As a result, I've been to 50 countries researching this over 20 years, and as a result, I see exactly the same structure, exactly the same things going on, exactly the same legislation being introduced to take freedom away and children away, almost worded the same sometimes. And this is why it's globally structured. And because of this, the spider at the center can manipulate down through the different levels of the web right into your local community. Now, this is the connection. These families and the agents that they put into office are overwhelmingly connected to satanic, ritual, and pedophile rings. They have an insatiable demand for children. And this is why I learned as the years passed through the 90s, the unbelievable, breathtaking, staggering scale of children who go missing in this world every day. Never mind every year. People have a perception of the number of children that go missing based on how many times a missing children's story appears in the local newspaper or with Madeleine McCann in the national news. That is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction ad infinitum of the number of children that go missing, never to be heard of again. And many of them, tremendous numbers of them, end up in these paedophile and satanic rings. I talk to people, survivors, those who have, all over the world, enormous numbers of them. This is a global phenomenon with the blueprint played out the same way in every country. When people come to me and say, I want to tell you my story, once they start, I know what's coming. Different names, yes, but the blueprint plays out every time. And I've got seriously interested in the last few months, particularly in the gathering aspect to this child abuse and child abduction, which is stealing children from loving parents by the state through the social services mafia. In the last few years, they have changed the way in which they process job applications for social services. They have done this to target certain personality types. And there'll be mothers listening to this who've had their children taken by the state who, my God, will understand what I'm about to say. They are targeting, recruiting, headhunting certain character types that have no empathy, no compassion, no heart, no ability to empathize with the agony beyond my comprehension of loving parents having their children who want to be with them taken away for spurious reasons, thanks to the constant conspiracy between social services staff, lawyers representing local councils and social services, judges, etc. So lacking empathy and compassion that there are more than one stories that I've heard. And one has actually appeared in a national newspaper at one point recently, where the staff, having taken away a child from a loving parent while the parents are in agony and distraught in the court, are high-fiving with each other for another great victory. Now, in this country, there's apparently 60 million people and growing, maybe even nearly 70 now, I don't know. In this world, there are 7 billion people and growing. The number of people who are controlling this world, who are putting us in the state we are of slavery, who are taking our children away, are a tiny, tiny fraction of the people on this planet and in this country. I think I see a way out of this. We need to come together and stop cooperating with this system. Not fight it. They want us to fight it. Just a few more people on the streets with weapons. Then, oh, we must fight the people. There's an uprising. No. This system, whether it's child abuse, whether it's stealing children from loving parents, or whether it's bombing the innocent around the world for political expansion and acquisition, the number of people doing it are a tiny fraction of those who are having it done in their name. The system is held together by our acquiescence. Enough! Enough! No more! And I say this to the people in luminous jackets and the dark suits that administer this system and conspire too, some of them, to take children away. You have no power. Your power is not in you. It's in the uniform the state gives you to put on. Your power is in the wardrobe, not in you. Take the uniform off. Where's your power? Gone. Change your job. Where's your power? Gone. You're just animating a uniform which is an extension of the state. And you have children and grandchildren too. And they're going to have to live in the world that you're helping to bring in. Wake up. Grow up. And we need to come together. Not just talk about it, but start organizing. Start organizing mass non-compliance. The non-comply dance. Dancing to a different drum. We're not having it anymore. And I'll finish on this. You know, people think, and this is how the system overcomes the people so much, is people think that it's not my problem. It's not my child. It's not my freedom that's been taken away directly. It's not me having to knock on the door in the middle of the night saying we want your child. But it is. Because if we don't draw a line in the sand now, then it will be your child eventually. It will be you. What did they say? What did that pastor say after Nazi Germany? First they came for the Jews and I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for the communists and I was not a communist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists and I was not a trade unionist and I did nothing. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak out for me. That is the road we're walking down. Anyone's injustice is our injustice. That's the only way to bring an end to this. And I'll just say finally, if you go to davidicke.com, there's an archive of stories and background information about the state stealing children. It's called State Steals Children. And there's also an email address State Steals Kids at AOL.com, where we're looking for stories and we're looking for experiences of particular psychologists and psychiatrists who are pulled out by the state, off the peg, out the wardrobe. Give us the verdict on this child or mother that we want. Thank you very much. See, Judge, she's crazy. See, Judge, she's been abused. See, Judge, she's not been abused. Whatever suits. We can change this situation because there are enormous numbers of us and a fraction of that number actually doing it. It's time to stand up, enough, time to fly and have none of this crap any longer. We get it because we take it. Thank you very much.